As Danielle and I were talking about in the last segment, the acrimonious exchanges continue between some of the Trump MAGA people and some of the DeSantis people. And we want to focus now on a couple of critiques of Trump that are out there and your kind of take on them and your answer to them. One of them has to do with Trump's response on COVID and the claim by the DeSantis people. They're saying, well, listen, our guy did a great job on COVID and your guy didn't. And a second critique of Trump, it's the way that Trump attacks people, and specifically Kayleigh McEnany, because Kayleigh McEnany, of course, was Trump's press secretary. I think by most people's consensus, mine included, she was a feisty and very effective press secretary defending Trump from the podium against hostile reporters. And the idea is, if Trump is going to go after her, it shows that really any ally of Trump has always got to watch it because he can turn on you like on a dime. And you were making the point that you think these criticisms are unfair to Trump.
Yeah, I think so, because, let's take Kayleigh McEnany, for example. I think all of us, yes, agreed. She was a great press secretary. That was a few years ago. But, she's a reporter now. Now she's at Fox News. And even Brian Kilmeade, whom I like, he said something like, she doesn't speak for any particular candidate. So in that case, I think that means that you are open to being criticized, because it's not like she's still working for Trump and Trump is still supporting her. She kind of did her time as press secretary and decided she wanted to do this Fox News job, and we know where Fox News stands on Trump. But basically, we can't have the situation where everybody demands undying loyalty from Trump and says, Trump can never criticize me for the rest of my life because I worked for Trump, yet you're free to be neutral or put out information that's sort of anti-Trump. That's not really fair, because she's not a surrogate for Trump. And so neither side has a continuing partnership in that sense. It's not like a lifeblood situation. And even if we look at someone like Sarah Sanders, I think she went on to become governor. She doesn't say negative things about Trump. But she's not being criticized by Trump as well. So I think that you don't have to put yourself in that situation, but by virtue of being at Fox News, that's going to affect Kayleigh McEnany's views and how she acts on TV. And also the fact that she has kind of chosen that she doesn't want to be on one team. She doesn't want to be pro-Trump. So that means that you don't really get that Trump immunity anymore, even though we can all say in the past that she did do a good job as press secretary. People change.
But she's had an interesting evolution, because it seems that before 2016, she was anti-Trump. And she has some very hostile things she said about Trump. And then again, very interestingly, Trump chose her. Because if Trump was such you got to be loyal to me for life, it's odd that he would have picked her. But he did pick her. She rallied to his defense. But then you're right. If you listen to Kayleigh McEnany today, she seems a little bit of a different person than the one that was up at the podium. In other words, it's almost like she's decided to go in with the Fox philosophy. And this does seem to be an institutional philosophy at Fox. I don't know if they're all in with DeSantis. They may be, but they certainly seem to be against Trump. And Trump knows that.
Yeah, certainly. And I think also the fact that so many people at Fox control what other people say, all those kinds of things, So it's not necessarily that I would say, oh my gosh, Kayleigh McEnany must have come up with this master plan against Trump. I'm sure that wasn't the case.
Right.
But it just means that she's more of a mouthpiece for a company, and also that, she doesn't really, no one would have immunity from Trump. Trump is going to criticize anyone who is, putting out non-factual information. So the polling information that she put out actually wasn't correct. And so
Trump was right to call her on it, is what you're saying. He had every right to.
Yeah, probably the news organization should issue a correction or say that, this was the correct information, just because they are supposed to be journalists.
Make a point about COVID, because of what about this idea that Trump sort of got it wrong on COVID, whereas, DeSantis, his supporters say, was right from the start?
I think that's kind of a longer discussion, but you'd have to really go into from the very beginning, which is that COVID, it was kind of like no one really knew exactly what it was. Trump said, we're going to shut down flights from China. We don't want to allow this to come in. Of course, that was when Nancy Pelosi was saying, Chinatown, all these things are racist.
And also, don't call it the China virus.
Don't call it the China virus. So I feel like each time you look at COVID, you have to look at it in like what time period are we talking about? Because yeah, sure, later everybody realized we need to be open, and many states, I think South Dakota also, Texas, other states moved in that direction of saying we have to be open, but nobody really knew that at the beginning. So at the beginning, I think Trump thought we're going to have people dying. I was in New York at the time, so he sent those big ships to New York basically to make sure people weren't like without medical care because all the hospitals would be totally full and all this. So I think people didn't realize how bad the situation would be. And then when I think back to the presidential debates, I remember Trump said there's going to be a vaccine like very soon. And basically nobody believed him. So there were a lot of articles that came out saying, oh no, there's no way there's going to be a vaccine ready. And then there was a vaccine ready. So I'm not saying that I'm saying you should take the vaccine or not take the vaccine. But basically, if you look at the timeline of how everything played out, everyone was basically in that situation where we didn't really know how bad COVID would be. And then I think as time went on, people realized that, yeah, actually, we do want to leave our homes and we want to do stuff. And it's up to you if you want to take the vaccine or wear masks or whatever. But a lot of people didn't know that.
Judge these guys by the information that was available at the time, and don't use the benefit of hindsight to say, now that we know what we know now, we're going to fault you for making decisions which you obviously made without the information we currently have.
Yeah, of course. And also I think it's different if you're president versus a governor, because if you're president and you choose to do nothing, everybody would blame you if it was this lethal virus that everybody's dying on the road from. They would say, well, Trump, why didn't you do something? So I think he was in a difficult situation of knowing what to do.
And he was getting bad information.